In this video we will be covering the rigging of all the blades. So I will first start with the blades that are stuck on the hips of the character. The idea is to have those blades to follow the movement of the hips since they are attached to the belt. But since we have a squash and stretch option on the hips, I don't want those to deform. So we will use our usual trick with 3 bones. The control bones will be parented by 2 constraint bones that will only copy the location and rotation of child bone of the hips. So I'm parenting those small bones to the hips, and from those small bones I will add a copy location and copy rotation to the intermediate bone. Since our 2 controllers are parented to those intermediate bones, they will inherit the location and rotation of the child of the hips, but they won't inherit the skull, so they won't deform. So I just need to select the first control bone and parent it to the first constraint bone, do the same with the other, and now when I rotate the hips, those blades follow. But as soon as the hips are stretched, the swords don't deform, allowing you to twerk with your character, which is very important, everybody knows that. I will then organize all these bones in the different layers, and we can then rig the main katana. So the first thing I want to create is a snap tool, or to make things simple, make the sword be held in the right or left hand, and allow the animator to have the choice. The mechanism is very simple. We just add a bone that is parented to the end, and from those bones we will add a copy transform to the katana so that it will snap to these bones. To help ourselves, we will use a new tool that we haven't used yet. So first I've duplicated the target katana bone, the bone that is controlling the katana, just to have one bone available, and I will place it inside the end, more or less where I imagine the katana would fit. I will then parent this bone to the target right hand so that it will follow all the movement of the hand, whether we are using IK or FK. If I now add the copy transform to the katana from this bone, the katana will snap onto the bone. If I want to fine-tune the position of the katana while I'm using the snap mode, I need to revise the position of this bone in edit mode, so that it will have a correct default position. The problem is when I enter edit mode, Blender doesn't read the constraint because we are in different modes, and so the katana returns to its default position, so it's hard to fine tweak its position. What we can do instead is tweak the position of the bone visually in pose mode, and then tell Blender this is the default position of the bone when it's in rest pose. To do so, I just need to go to pose and apply pose as rest pose. Then in the contextual box, I need to check this bone only. Now when I will enter edit mode, the bone won't move because this has become its default position. Since I want to be able to move the katana even when it has the constraints, so I've just duplicated the target katana bone and scaled it down. When I return into pose mode, it will snap because, as you remember, whenever you duplicate a bone, the duplicated bone will keep the same constraints. So I can remove the constraint from the original bone, and then I will parent it to the duplicated bone. In edit mode, I will then symmetrize our first target bone so that we have both targets in both hands, and I will add another copy transform constraint that will allow me to snap onto the other bone, meaning that I will be able to snap into the other end. Then, as usual, we will create a custom property on our custom property bone that will be used as a driver for those 2 constraints. So I will speed up the video while I'm creating those custom properties because we've done this so many times before, and I will explain you what I want to do next. We have created the possibility to make the weapon follow whether the right or the left hand. But what if I want the character to use this weapon with both hands at the same time? Trying to match the animation of one hand with the other to fake the thing that it is stuck to the handle of the sword is not an option. This is very complicated and tedious. But what if instead of moving the hands, we were moving the sword and the arm would follow? That would be way easier. The problem is that since we are using our hand to constrain the weapon, we can't use the weapon to constrain our hand. That will create a loop in the dependency, which we have talked before. If I try to constrain a parent with a child, it will sure be buggy because the child depends on the parent. So if the child made the parent move, but the parent made the child move, this is looping and you get very buggy results. So we will have to create another bone that will override all the parenting and relationship issues. So let's create this master controller by duplicating the katana bone and scale it up. This will be our controller katana master. I will move it in front of the character so that whenever our character switches to this mechanism, he should have the blade in front of him. So this is quite of an arbitrary choice, but I want it like this. I will make sure this bone has no parent, or at least it is parented to the root bone, and place it. Then if I add a copy transform from this bone onto the katana will snap to it. We will be able to add later on a driver onto the constraint so that we can swap between snapping to this master bone or snapping to the ends of the character. By the way, if you're asking yourself why my bones are colored, this is because I've re-recorded these videos later on because it was really confusing. So I've decided to remake them. So they are just assigned to bone groups. They have no specific constraint or any stuff like this. The idea is then to drive the IK controllers of the arm. So as usual, we will create our 3 bone hierarchy. I will parent the IK controller to the second bone. This second bone will be constrained by the smallest bone, and the smallest bone will be parented to the master controller of the blade. So this mechanism can only work with inverse kinematic because we will be moving the blade to move the arms. So the movement will come from the hand to the shoulders. We can't use it with the FK. So in the meantime, I'm just renaming the bone and displaying the name in the armature so that it's clearer, and I will isolate everything, so I will hide all the other bones so that it's clear for you. So I hide everything, get back into pose mode, hide everything again, and now if I select the smallest bone and add a copy transform constraint to the second one, when I move the smallest bone, the IK controller will follow because it is parented to the intermediate bone. And so, if this little bone is parented to our katana master, whenever I will move the katana master, it will follow. So I will repeat the process on the right arm. Now if I move the katana master, the arms will follow. So the only thing I have to do now is to correctly position the arm by default. To do so, we will use the apply pose as rest pose on those smallest bone. So using the smallest bone, I will try to correctly place the hands on the blade. So we don't have to close the fingers and do stuff like this. We just need to properly place the hands. If it's not perfect, it doesn't really matter. You will still have the possibility then to tweak the position when animating your character with the IK controller. But the better is your position now, the less work you will have to do whenever you are animating. So using the smallest MCH bone, I'm just trying to place the hands over the handle of the blade. I don't care about the stretching of the arms, etc. The only thing important here is the position of the hands. And once I will be done, I will select both bone and press Ctrl A or go to pose, apply pose as rest pose, and select only selected in the panel. So if I now play with the influence of the second MCH bone, the MCH intermediary bone, the end will snap or not to the blade. We finally just need to add a driver to the copy transform on both MCH end and on the katana to get rid of this copy transform influence and to be able to use or not this master katana controller that will allow us to move both the ends and the blade. So now when I will use the custom property, the ends will automatically snap in place. The katana will also move to the master controller, and when I move the master controller, the arm will follow, the katana will follow. So the cool thing is that I can keep the end snapping and then switch to this double end snapping. But I do need to switch controller in between, meaning that if I want to move the katana, I have then to use the master controller. So then I will move all the bones in the right layers and will be good to go to the next video.